Welcome to the deep dive. Oh, get ready, because today we are plunging headfirst into the magnificent, well, nail-biting chaos unfolding right at the top of the Premier League. The 2024-25 season is like careening towards its final whistle.
It really is.
And specifically, we're talking about this utterly bonkers, unprecedented battle for those final three UEFA Champions League spots.
Yeah.
All happening on the last day.
It's genuinely wild, isn't it? And for this deep dive, we've zeroed in on one source, an article by Alex Keble that really breaks down the contenders, their fixtures, everything. So
Right.
our mission really is to unpack all those scenarios, get into the, unique pressures on each of these five clubs.
Six clubs.
Five, yeah. And crucially, dig into the sources' predictions, try and figure out what's most likely to happen, and I guess why all this drama actually matters so much.
And you're absolutely right. What makes this deep dive so compelling and frankly unique is just the sheer scale of it.
Yeah.
The source makes this point. We've seen final day scrambles before, yeah.
Sure, happens most years.
But usually it's maybe two clubs scrapping for one spot. This time, we've got five teams: Manchester City, Newcastle, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Nottingham Forest.
All separated by just 3 points.
Exactly. 3 points fighting for three spots. It's setting up for an afternoon that's going to be pure agony for the fans involved.
Oh, definitely. But totally gripping theater for everyone else watching.
Absolutely.
And the stakes, I mean, they couldn't possibly be higher, could they? It's not
Yeah.
just prestige.
No.
Champions League qualification is, well, it's an absolute financial lifeline for these clubs.
Huge money.
Huge. Missing out doesn't just dent the ego. It can seriously derail transfer plans, budgets, make it harder to attract top players, and there's that extra layer of peril the article flags.
Right, the Europa Conference League bit.
Yeah, unless Chelsea somehow finish 6th and manage to win that Conference League final later on, one of these 5 teams,
Yep.
they'll end up with no European football at all next season.
Wow. Imagine the post-mortem on that. Okay, so let's get our bearings. Let's look at the table as it stands right now, heading into Sunday. Our source has Manchester City in third on 68 points.
Okay.
Then, incredibly, you've got Newcastle United, Chelsea, and Aston Villa, all locked together on 66 points.
Wow, levels.
Separated only by goal difference. Newcastle's fourth, plus 22, Chelsea fifth, plus 20, Villa sixth, plus 9, and then just 1 point behind them in seventh, Nottingham Forest on 65 points.
So 5 teams, 3 points, 3 places. It really just hammers home the fine margins, doesn't it?
My head spins just saying it.
Okay, let's start at the top of that pack then. Manchester City. Sitting, well, maybe not pretty, but in third on 68 points.
Yeah.
The article suggests they are, relatively speaking, in the strongest position. They should feel confident. What they need is pretty straightforward.
A draw does it.
A draw away at Fulham secures their spot. Simple as that. Even if they somehow lose, they'd still likely qualify if 2 of their rivals also drop points.
What I found interesting in the article's take on City, though, was the nuance around pressure. Keble notes, City usually handles final day pressure by winning titles, like they did against Bournemouth recently.
Right, different kind of pressure.
Exactly. This is a different beast. It's not about lifting a trophy right now. It's more about the financial future, the ability to rebuild, strengthen the squad for next season's title challenge.
Spot on. Missing out on the Champions League would significantly complicate things for Guardiola. Not just the money, but also that potentially draining Sunday schedule in the Europa League. Nobody wants that if they can help it.
Definitely not.
Yet, despite all that, the article's prediction remains pretty firm. They should be absolutely fine.
And the stats back that up.
Oh, yeah. Keble pulls out the head-to-head. Fulham have lost their last 17 matches against City
17.
and haven't beaten them in 23 attempts, stretching all the way back to, April 2009?
Incredible record.
So a win guarantees City third or higher. A draw guarantees Champions League unless Villa somehow pull off a 17-goal swing against Manchester United.
Which, let's face it, isn't happening.
Not likely, no.
So, okay, even a club with the global power and resources of Manchester City feels that very real pressure, the consequences of potentially dropping out of Europe's top competition. It just highlights how vital Champions League football is, really, across the board.
It really does. Okay. Moving down that incredibly tight table, Newcastle United currently 4th, 66 points, just ahead on goal difference.
Their task, on paper at least, looks maybe the most achievable of the chasing pack. Beat Everton at home.
Seems like it. A win guarantees them top 5, guarantees Champions League for a second season running.
But a draw.
A draw, however, opens the door wide open for Chelsea, Villa, maybe even Forest if results go weirdly.
The article frames Newcastle's situation around ambition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mentions Staveley's goal.
Yeah, Amanda Staveley's goal for Newcastle to one day be Premier League champions. And achieving that dream, well, it requires consistent Champions League football. That's the platform.
Makes sense.
So that's why, Keble argues, there's maybe subtly more pressure on Newcastle than some of the others. This isn't just about making the Champions League this one time. It's about proving they belong there. After missing out last season, taking that next step, establishing themselves.
Right. Proving last time wasn't a one-off. And the prediction from the article.
Newcastle ought to get the job done. That's the verdict.
Based on
Mainly their formidable home form. 6 consecutive Premier League wins at St. James's Park. And just the sheer energy of the crowd, which, Keble believes will help kind of blow Everton away.
Okay. Sounds promising for them. But there was a note of caution, wasn't there?
Yes. And this adds a layer of sort of fascinating debate. Keble includes this nagging feeling. He floats potential concerns, maybe Alexander Isak's fitness, general team tiredness this late in the season.
End of a long campaign.
Exactly. And the physical challenge from Everton's midfield, possibly making it a bit of a grind, a frustrating afternoon rather than a comfortable win.
Interesting point. Can they handle that kind of anxious, tight match if things don't go smoothly early on?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a test of their mental fortitude, really, as much as their footballing quality. If they want to be elite, they need to win these kinds of games.
Right. So while the form points one way, the psychology, the specific matchup, introduces a little doubt.
Okay, let's shift gears. Chelsea, 5th place, also on 66 points.
Now, the article makes a really strong case that maybe they are the club under the most acute pressure to qualify.
Because of the spending.
Absolutely. Just look at the astronomical sums the Blue Cow ownership has poured in since 2022. They haven't actually reached the Champions League under this regime yet.
Good point.
And you've got a fan base used to success, understandably impatient. Qualification is seen as pretty essential to justify that spending, show some kind of return on investment.
And what about Maresca? The article seemed fairly balanced on him. Yeah, Keble gives a balanced take. Notes that securing top 5 plus reaching that Conference League final would actually represent a pretty solid, maybe even impressive debut season for him, especially given the circumstances, despite, some of the criticism about style of play.
So, their task.
Yeah.
Win away at Nottingham Forest. A win guarantees Champions League. A draw.
A draw means they're relying on Villa not beating Manchester United. A defeat, and Forest leapfrog them.
Okay.
But here's where the article throws up a really provocative prediction, one that definitely sparked my own analysis. Keble states a win for Chelsea on Sunday. Doesn't feel likely.
Wow, that is a strong statement.
Yeah.
Chelsea against Forest. You usually favor Chelsea on paper. What's the reasoning?
Well, several factors, according to the article. There's the city ground atmosphere, notoriously intimidating.
Always tough there.
But Keble focuses more on the specific tactical matchup. He argues Forest's central defensive partnership, Murillo and Milinkovic, are kind of tailor-made to handle a Chelsea attack that maybe lacks that traditional focal point, especially if Jackson's missing or not fully fit.
Okay, makes sense tactically.
And crucially, he points to Chelsea's really poor away form. Only the 11th best in the league, which is pretty shocking for them. Just 1 win in their last 11 away matches.
1 in 11. Ouch.
Yeah. And the analysis goes deeper, highlighting a specific tactical weakness. Keble points out Chelsea's struggles against teams that let them have the ball but defend deep and counter quickly.
The classic low block counter.
Exactly. Chelsea have won just 2 of 7 matches this season where they've had 65% or more possession. And that includes a frustrating 1-1 draw against this same Forest team at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season.
So the prediction is basically history might repeat itself. Forest could frustrate them again.
That's the idea. The prediction is Sunday could very easily follow that pattern and, maybe not end in a Chelsea win.
This really underlines the article's approach, doesn't it? It's not just about who has the bigger names or more points overall. It's how styles clash on the day, historical matchups, current form, especially away form, becoming critical.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece of analysis that definitely goes against just picking the bigger club to win automatically.
Okay, let's talk Aston Villa then. 6th place, also 66 points, but worse goal difference. Their scenario seems maybe the most complex. Heavily reliant on other results.
It is quite dependent, yeah. They basically need to win away at Manchester United and hope either Chelsea or Newcastle fail to win,
Right.
or they win and City somehow lose, which, as we said, the source thinks is unlikely. Or they could draw, but then they need Newcastle to lose.
So essentially, they're looking for a favor from Fulham, Everton, or perhaps most likely Forest doing something against Chelsea.
Pretty much. Although, if Chelsea don't win their match against Forest, then Villa just need to win at Old Trafford themselves to get into the top 5. That simplifies it a bit for them, potentially.
Okay. And Villa, like Newcastle, have ambitious owners.
Very ambitious. Keble notes that Champions League qualification would be massive for them financially, helps solidify Villa as a genuine force, a player on the European stage again.
And with Emery.
Exactly. With a manager like Unai Emery, who's got such a proven track record in Europe, and with stadium expansion plans underway, consistent Champions League football isn't just a pipe dream. It feels like a genuine pathway to challenging the established top clubs.
Yeah, Emery's European pedigree is undeniable. They pushed PSG so hard in the Conference League this season.
Yeah.
Imagine him in the Champions League proper.
What adds that layer of debate to Villa's chances is the task itself, winning at Old Trafford. Keble doesn't exactly sugarcoat it, calls it not a given.
Their record there isn't great, is it?
Historically poor, yeah. Just one Premier League win there since 2009. And he mentions that psychological blow of losing from 2-0 up last season. History really can weigh heavily in these big crunch matches.
True. Despite that specific hurdle, though, the article does lean towards them winning.
It does, yeah. It predicts they ought to beat Manchester United. And the reasoning there is pretty simple. United are just in dreadful form.
Terrible run.
Only 2 points from their last 8 Premier League matches. Defense is leaky. Villa's attack under Emery is potent. On current form, Villa should win.
Okay. And then there's that interesting blessing in disguise angle Keble mentions.
Right. If Villa miss out on the Champions League but still secure Europa League football, which they will unless Forest win by a huge margin and they lose, they have a manager who's won that competition 4 times.
Emery's competition.
Exactly. While it's not the top prize, it offers a very real chance for silverware, a different kind of European success next season. Still a positive outcome, arguably.
Okay, finally, down in 7th. The outsiders in this specific race for the Champions League spots. Nottingham Forest on 65 points.
Their direct path is definitely the narrowest. They absolutely have to win against Chelsea at home and then hope either Villa or Newcastle fail to win their matches.
So they need 2 results to go their way.
Yeah. Dropping points earlier, especially against relegated Leicester, that was undeniably a blow to their Champions League hopes. Put their destiny out of their own hands.
But the crucial point Keble makes about Forest, maybe the most insightful bit, is that they are under the least pressure of these 5 clubs.
How so? Because they've already secured Europe.
Exactly. The reasoning is compelling. It completely reframes their whole season. Keble argues they've already achieved what he calls an unqualified success.
Right.
Think about it. They're the first team in Premier League history to actually double their points tally from the previous season. That's huge progress.
Incredible turnaround.
And whatever happens against Chelsea, they're guaranteed European football for the first time in 30 years. They've already secured at least the Conference League spot.
Assuming Chelsea don't win the ECL final and finish outside the top 6, yeah.
Right. So for Forest, this final day is almost like a free hit at the Champions League jackpot.
That's precisely the angle Keble takes. This shift in perspective from maybe worrying about relegation earlier to guaranteed Europe is key to his analysis of their final day chances. He predicts that playing without that crushing pressure the others are facing might actually work in Forest's favor. We talked about Chelsea's potential tactical vulnerabilities earlier. Keble believes Forest's setup is defensively solid enough to frustrate Chelsea again.
Like they did at Stamford Bridge.
Exactly. And they're perfectly set up to exploit the space Chelsea often leave behind with those quick counterattacks.
So the team that arguably needs Champions League the least, compared to the financial muscle or immediate expectations at City, Chelsea, Newcastle, even Villa, might actually be the one best place to snatch a spot.
Precisely because that immense pressure isn't weighing them down. It's a fantastic piece of analysis, I think. A really interesting psychological angle.
Okay, so let's quickly bring it all together then based on Keble's article. Manchester City and Newcastle. They're seen as the strong favorites to get 2 of the spots, assuming they secure wins.
Right. They ought to get it done, is the feeling.
If that happens, the 3rd and final Champions League place likely comes down almost entirely to that one match. Chelsea versus Nottingham Forest at the City Ground.
Yeah, with Villa needing Forest to get a result there and needing to win at Old Trafford themselves to have a chance.
It really is set up for a potentially chaotic, constantly shifting live table on Sunday, isn't it?
Absolutely. Nail-biting stuff.
So drawing on this deep dive into Alex Keble's analysis, you've now got, hopefully, a clearer picture of the intricate scenarios for each of these 5 teams. We've unpacked the specific pressures unique to each club.
Yeah, and highlighted those key factors the article believes will dictate things: head-to-heads, form, tactical matchups, even team psychology under pressure.
We tried to go beyond just listing who needs what and looked at why certain outcomes are considered more or less likely, according to this expert analysis, hopefully giving you a framework to understand the potential twists and turns as it all unfolds in real time.
Yeah, making sense of the potential chaos.
Exactly. And thinking about the source's emphasis on those psychological factors, the weight of expectation versus the freedom of having already succeeded. Here's maybe a final thought for you to mull over as you watch it all unfold. Considering which clubs arguably need this the most versus the one, Forest, that seems to have the least pressure. Will the teams with the greatest perceived burden, potentially crumble under that weight, or will they find a way to rise above it?
And conversely.
Yeah, conversely, could Nottingham Forest, playing with that sort of liberating sense of having already surpassed expectations, use that freedom to actually snatch a Champions League spot, precisely because they don't need it in the same desperate way as maybe some of the others?
It's a fascinating question heading into Sunday, isn't it? Pressure versus freedom. Which wins out? We'll see. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.